This conversation um, is organized in line with Void of Spectacles, an exhibition we currently have in Ateneo Art Gallery. We opened last February 4. So it's a conversation between the featured artist, Mark Orozco, Justiniani, and Vanini Belarmino, an independent curator with whom Mark has worked with for one of the featured projects. Ang haba ng write-up ni Vanini ah. Okay. Sandali, ayun. Yun pala. Okay. So Vanini was actually my former student. Vanini Belarmino is an independent curator, producer, and writer whose interest lies in the productive potential of encounters by identifying collaborations between artists across genres. Originally from the Philippines, she has spearheaded art initiatives in Asia, Europe, and the Middle East. We actually worked with her recently for a performance work by Lilibeth Cuenca Rasmussen. This was last July, no? July. She was also the assistant director for programs at the National Gallery Singapore from 2016 and 2021, and this was when she worked with Mark. While there, she served as curator for 3 editions of the Gallery of Children's Biennale, namely in 2017, 2019, and 2021, as well as the Children's Festival Small Big Dreamers in 2018. She's a recipient of numerous grants and fellowships, including the Asian Cultural Council New York Fellowship and the Global Society for the International Society for Performing Arts. She holds a bachelor's degree in theater arts ka nga pala, no? From the University of the Philippines, and a diploma in European Cultural Project Management from the Marcel Hichter Foundation in Belgium. Vanini, please take the floor. And our featured artist, Mark Orozco Justiniani. His current practice merges social and magic realism through various mediums, whether through paintings, assemblage, or immersive installations. He studies the notions of perception by incorporating the concepts of metaphysics and observations of the material. His practice is often identified by his associations with artist initiatives such as Abay or Artista ng Bayan, Sanggawa, and Saling Pusa Art Group. Currently, he spearheads projects with Joy Malyari through Aninagan Art Initiatives and Tungtung Alon Art Foundation. Mark, can we ask you to join, to go up on stage? And so the format is a conversation between the two of them, and then at some point, if we will get some questions from the floor if there are any. Okay?
Hi, magandang hapon po. Good afternoon, old friends, colleagues, fellow cultural workers, artists, curators. As Booth said, my name is Vanini Belarmino, and I'm an independent curator. And we'd like to thank you for joining us, choosing to be with us this afternoon for this conversation with the artist Mark Justiniani, Void of Spectacles. As Boots already mentioned, the exhibition, the title itself of this conversation borrows from the title of the exhibition at Ateneo Art Gallery, which is actually the homecoming of 3 of Mark's major Infinity series. So the first one of which, I'm very proud, I was the curator of Fire Walk, which was commissioned by the National Gallery Singapore, and it was housed there for a couple of years, from 2017 until 2021. It has a sister work or a sibling work, which is called The Well. It was commissioned by the Staatliches Kunstsammlung in Dresden, and it was housed at the Japanisches Palais from 2017 to 2021. So I'm marking those dates because like it's quite an extraordinary thing to have such a monumental installation housed within two big institutions, both in Asia and Europe, for a couple of years, and it's had several lives or several iterations. And then finally, of course, the homecoming of the much anticipated homecoming of Archipelago, which was part of the Philippine representative for the 58th Venice Biennale, commissioned by the Philippine Arts and Venice Biennale. So I've had the pleasure of working with Mark in the last 7 years out of his illustrious near 40-year career. Ilang araw naman pinag-usapan to, is it really 40 years? But I think like, you know, if it's 7 years when he entered UP, etc. So today I think what we'll try to do is like give you a glimpse into the thinking and how these monumental works were created, how he moved from painting to developing works that are immersive, interactive, and participatory. So paano nag-translate yung paint to like these large-scale materials, and of course, the invitation for the public and the audiences to become part of an artwork. So this is like we have 1 hour and a half, so I'll try like the conversation between us are mga 1 hour, and then the last 30 minutes of the session will open the floor for questions. If you have burning questions or inquiry, just feel free to raise your hand, and yeah, we'll try to accommodate it as it comes. So I guess, Mark, yan, after hundreds of hours of conversation, eto na, 60 minutes, so I'll try to do my best. So we'll start from the beginning. Ayan, beginning. So, Mark, maybe we've spoken a lot about your early beginnings. I think for some of you who don't know, Mark is from Victorias Negros, and I kind of wanted to ask this question of like how was it as a child growing up in Victorias Negros, and how this particular church, St. Joseph, the Worker Chapel, impacted you, having encountered the work of Alfonso Osorio, the Angry Christ, and then the work of Benjamin Valenciano Sr., the woodcuts. Ito yung mga woodcuts before it became hip to say, you know, Filipinized things. This was like made in around 1940s, early 1940s or late 1940s. Yeah, 1949. And then also, of course, Ade de Buthu's mosaic works. So how this, you know, what yung idea, what art could be, how this shaped your way of thinking, and then later on in pursuing your artistic practice.
Good afternoon. Magandang hapon sa inyong lahat. My first encounter with art, as we know it, was in a chapel. It's the St. Joseph the Worker Chapel in my hometown in Victorias Negros Occidental. It was a controversial chapel kasi there's a mural there. It's the altarpiece, and it's more famously known as the Angry Christ. The title is actually The Last Judgment, but it's now more famously called as the Angry Christ. And I saw this piece along with the other pieces in the chapel when I was about 3 or 4 years old. So imagine seeing this in a place of worship when you're 3 years old or 4 years old. And I didn't know what art was. No? So you don't have to know the concept of art in order to have a very artful experience. That's the first lesson, siguro. No? And the other one is that almost all of the images there, the icons, were brown-skinned. And I think that's a very important part. No? The making it your own, turning something sacred into something else. So, the combination of fear, actually, and the beauty captivated me as a child. No? And I didn't know art. So, yun ang medyo mahalaga rin doon. So, I knew that art could be played with and even things that are considered sacred. They're malleable, they can be changed. And I think that's one of the guiding lights in my artwork, even up to now. So, I lived in the town proper. This was in Victoria's Milling Company. It's a separate compound. But in the town proper, there's a plaza there. And every April 25 and 26, which falls on my birthday, we have a fiesta. And during fiestas, there are magicians. There's the carnival. And we would go there. And one time, I befriended a magician. His name was Bert Salamanca. And I wanted to learn a couple of tricks. And he said, I'll teach you some tricks, but you have to give me an artwork. So,
Eto siya.
and
That's,
it was performed on stage, a black and white picture. And it turns colored when he pulls out that picture from the frame. No? So that's in exchange for two tricks. One is a vanishing cigarette and a floating wand. No? But one of the interesting things that I've seen there is the aesthetic of the performance. Because in town fairs, the contraptions for magic are just rickety, clumsy. They're not slick at all. And he performed this levitating assistant, levitating lady. And it was, you knew that the contraption was not working perfectly well. But why is it that it's still effective? Why is it that it was still eerie and scary? And again, that kind of aesthetic has guided me even up to now. No? What is there in something that is, how do you say it? Not that slick, but actually very mysterious. And it has that element of fear in it. No?
so despite of the fear, you still pursued art.
Yeah.
What was it that made you decide to enter into the art world?
Because I always loved to draw. And my father would bring comics from Bacolod. It's an hour away. And I would copy the Marvel and DC characters. At that time, we only had 2 TV stations, 2 newspapers, no cable TV, no cell phones. And that was the information that was I was absorbing. Our house was located right beside our machine shop. And I would hear the sound of metal being hammered, welded, grinded, and lathed. And I could smell the welding, I could smell the burnt metal. But at the same time, on the other side of our home, when you open the main door, I'd see my mother's garden. And you have a combination of nature and technology on the other side. And my mother was a very good pianist, and we would sing songs in our home, along with the banging of the metal that you can hear from our machine shop. And again, that resurfaces in my work.
So because Mark, do you want to talk about the painting? How how somehow your hometown has actually stayed in your works, because it's still evident in the current piece that you will see in Ateneo Archipelago. It's very visible. So maybe you want to share a bit about this story.
Yes. This is a scene that I saw in the plaza. And I saw children playing in this bench. But this bench was, there's a tree. Originally, there's a tree in the middle of the bench. And it was hit by lightning. and it fell on the round bench, and it broke the circle. And I saw kids running, and there was one older male figure that was running with them, or playing with them. And I just made this painting of a lady that's looking at her reflection in the mirror. She has grown up faster than the other children. No? And there's also one painting of a scene that I used to see every day in front of our machine shop. And these are the sacadas, the farmers, that were transported from the town plaza to the fields. And they would work in the fields, and in the afternoon they will be brought to the town plaza, and they'll go back to their homes. Now, so I'd see this every day, and I painted them. They're sugarcane farmers.
So, if you're wondering why we chose those images, because I felt that it was sort of a foreshadowing of events. Because in the beginning, I always thought, in the last 7 years, I thought that Mark really jumped really far away from his practice of painting to using the two-way mirrors and doing large-scale installations. But actually, these paintings somehow you'll see later on, and if you have been to Ateneo, you probably would understand the connection between this, like maybe paintings that were done almost more than 30 years ago.
1993.
1993, and then coming up in the physical or like the 3D work. So, Mark, so what sort of made you decide to move from, or what was it that allowed you to move from painting to sort of handling materials like, 3D materials, objects, and braving that step?
In 1994, we transferred to Las Piñas, and I noticed that the jeepneys there were different. And the roads were smaller, and I was at the back seat of the jeep, and I was looking at the jeep following us. And you would see these visors. No? Visors ang tawag nila ron, yung katas ng Saudi, Japayuki, others are Virgin Chaser, all these, some are phrases. And they're a very rich source for art making. And I said that I was going to do some artworks based on the jeepney, and I did it for the first time at the CCP, the Cultural Center of the Philippines, for the 13 Artist Awards. And during that time, I was also thinking about the flipping of the words in the Philippine language. But before that, because in 1983, Benigno Aquino was assassinated, and in 1986, the People Power Revolution happened. And when you look at the number 1986, it shares the same numbers as 1896. So it made me think about the revolution of the Katipunan against Spain, and why the coincidence. And I was thinking about in word na yosi, which is cigarillo, yosi, and Jeprox. I don't know if you still know the word. Who still knows the word Jeprox? So marami. Okay.
Year you're born.
Yes. 70s, 80s. Jeprox is hippie, no? Hippie. Why Jeprox? Would you know? And it started in the projects. No? Project 1, 2, 3. That's where the drugs are being sold. No? So, Jeprox project. There's a song, Project 2, 3, and 4 by Juan de la Cruz. Kailangan ng umiscore. Project 6, 7, 8, hindi kabitin sa isang guhit. No? So, why do we flip words? And then I reached this point, maliban sa erpat, ermat, a lot of words. And then I thought about lupa, which is the earth, and ulap, which is the sky. They share the same letters. Okay? Is this a coincidence? And how do you say to look up in Tagalog? To look up. Tingala. So, andito ka sa lupa. Tingala. Say it backwards. Langit. Langit. Oh, the heavens. So from ulap lupa, tingala langit. And when you see the heavens, you see alapaap, which is the clouds. No? Alapaap. And say it backwards. Look down, paapala. Paapala. When you say nood, anong pinapanood nyo? Flip it, doon, there. No? So this talks about space. Okay? Our relationship with space. And what about time? How do you say to remember? Alaala. Or noon, in the past. Or alala. Say it backwards. It's still alala, alaala, or noon. Palindrome siya. No, palindromes. Whereas, when you talk about space, the meaning flips, but they share the same letters. So, these are the two fundamental givens kung dun tayo sa Newtonian physics, no? Which is space and time. The two constants, no? Space and time. And we have our own conception of space and time. Our ancestors did. Which is why I'm wondering why this is not being taught in schools. Kasi we see space and time as one. Or as very, very intertwined or related. So that led me to putting words beside mirrors and the meanings flip, or sometimes the reflections would reinforce at certain point, a certain subject. So that's when the mirrors began, and the jeepney materials were just a perfect, it was just a perfect medium for that. And at that time, President Ramos, he was our leader at that time, and there was talk of another martial law or something. Every administration you get that. And I noticed that they almost share the same letters as Marcos. And they're cousins. No? So ang title nito is Magkabiyak. Magkabiyak. And lakas, lakas means strong. Or yung malakas at maganda. And sakal. Yung, ano. Pero lakas is also, lakas NUCD, which was the party of President Ramos. So this is a mirror piece. The other side is a mirror, and on the left side is the actual material, no, the actual thing.
So we spoke about like yung parang, is it a choice between mastery or exploration? Because like for 5 years, I think nung we were discussing it the other night, Mark was saying like he was wondering why he pursued this jeepney project for about 5 years. Tama ba? 5 years, and then eventually it kind of made sense like when he started doing the Infinity Works. But now moving towards Infinity Works, the title of the show is Void of Spectacles, and I really want to know, like, siguro kayo then you have similar thinking, why Void of Spectacles? Also, like, why do such works? Mahirap siyang gawin, you know. It's like the show in Ateneo, it's like about 9 containers.
6 to about 9 in total.
About 9.
9 10-wheeler trucks.
Yeah, and you know, when we were doing it in Singapore, it was already a challenge. That was just one bridge, which was about 53 feet, and now you have a full set of exhibition. Why do it? You could have continued painting. I guess why also brave this medium, and also for the audience, why cross sort of something that's unknown? Why cross the void?
It's a choice between mastery or exploration. I realized, I think that mastery was not my goal in art making. I think exploration to me is kind of more important than mastery, although both are, I mean, prerequisites for a good work. You know? But I chose that, and in our case, actually painting gives you sustenance. It's if you want to be more practical, you'd go for painting, and if you want to explore, it's just it's just more difficult in our case. In other countries, the institutions are stronger than the market, and they have more experimental works. But here, well, it's developing, it's growing. So we'll see in a few years. But I think the artwork also teaches me. It teaches the artist. No? I wouldn't have thought of thinking about physics, for example, if I did not explore on mirrors. Like, let's say the mirror. The mirror is a two-dimensional object, actually. It has some thickness, but mainly it's two-dimensional. You have length and the width, but you don't have height. Or if it's flat on the ground. But it carries three-dimensional images. So how come? It goes beyond its own physical limitations. And if you put two mirrors in front of each other, you get a tunnel of infinity. And isn't that just a perfect medium for saying something that is beyond our experience in the four-dimensional world, which is three-dimensional or spatial dimensions and one time, you know. And there are studies right now that say that there are not just four dimensions. In fact, some physicists would say that there are 10 spatial dimensions and one time, which means there are 11 dimensions. No? We somehow feel that what we see in the world, this is not it. For example, if you see the color green or the color red, that object is not green. It rejects all, it absorbs all colors except for green or red, you know. That's why we see it as that. No? So our senses are very, very limited. If you look at the light spectrum, light is not just Roy G. Biv. That's just visible light. There's microwaves, there's gamma rays, there's ultraviolet light, there's microwaves. And all these are invisible to us. But ultraviolet light, the bees can see it, insects can see it. Infrared, some snakes can see infrared, but we cannot. You know. Some dogs can hear pitches that we can't. So we are looking at the world, we operate in the world with very, very limited means. That's why we think about what's beyond the senses. No.
So on a practical level, Mark, how do you make this visible, this invisible, these things that you just shared with us, these things that you imagine in your mind?
The works that you're going to see, if you see it in actual, more than 90% of it is not there. They don't exist. They're all reflections and reflections of reflections of reflections. You know. So replicating a cross-section of a piece that it multiplies more than 10 times, or with light it multiplies about 22 times. It extends our perception of what's real when actually most of it is not, no? And most of it is actually not matter. So it makes you think about what matter is and what non-matter is, and this oscillation of two things are just, you know, how we operate in life. There's always that oscillation. We think about what is beyond. We think about what St. Joseph's Chapel was trying to capture, and what the scientists also are trying to understand. Why are we here? How are we? How is it that we are here? You know, all those questions. It just opens up, and the medium brought me there.
Grabe. Oh, with all those questions, it's really admirable how you were able to create these works. Maybe you want to share how maybe the space also influences this thinking, because you still need a place to house these ideas and this, you know, place for imagination, and to make it something that's more tangible that the audience can actually enjoy. As you can see here, this is like the first time that one of the biggest works was shown, like Firewalk. This is at the National Gallery, but I'm just gonna move back a bit, and so it was an empty space, and yeah, you were saying how did you imagine this? This is the work. My job at that time was to basically to curate a show that will activate the public circulation areas of a 60,000 square meter museum. It's like two historical sites, the former Supreme Court of Singapore and the former City Hall. This is where the Japanese surrendered in front of that. So it's, and then I asked Mark, when I ran into Mark at the art fair in Singapore, I asked whether he could think how to fill this space, again, filling a void, because the museum just opened. It was less than a year old, and I was quite lucky to find them, like, at the art fair. Yeah. So what was the thinking? Because you immediately sent me this drawing the day after, like literally a day after we met. We met on a Thursday, 2 days later, Friday, and then Saturday I already had something that he already imagined for this space.
I immediately thought of doing a bridge. But at that time, I think the biggest piece that we've made was, it's not this big. And at first, I think we were, Joy and I, we were just thinking of doing, I think, 15 feet or 20 feet. But later, the space demanded that it should be bigger. And eventually, we settled with 53 feet long. And you can just imagine the logistics of doing that. And the glass itself is very heavy. It's 33 mm thick. And it had to be not tempered, because tempered glass tend to ripple the images. So it's heat strengthened and double laminated. And there's another mirror underneath, which is thinner, and it's very fragile. So it's heavy, and it's fragile. And we wanted to do this bridge. So what is it about? You know? And I thought of doing an initiation rite, some kind of a ritual. And the ritual would be, it's about the cycle of life. So it begins with the void, and then the construction of the idea of the self during childhood. So you have building blocks and children's toys, and then the accumulation of knowledge in the middle part, and the role of risk and gambling, and, you know, measuring yourself against others. And in the last part, it's unstable, the ground is curving, and there are keepsakes. There are memories that we choose to keep and memories that we choose to forget also. And then it goes back to the void. But you have to go through this by walking on, you know, something that appears like you're going to fall. So it's like, how do you suspend the fall or simulate flight, except that you're feeling your own weight? Yeah, I think.
But you also responded to because it was an excavation site, so the space that you're seeing didn't exist before. It was a parking lot, and there were like some found objects, and yeah. So do you always incorporate like I guess like the history of the space in your work? Like, also,
Yeah.
like this
There were relics that were excavated in the site. So we also included some replicas of those relics on the first and the last segments in the void. And also the work is like an excavation site, but it also looks like foundational structures.
This is the sister of the bridge. Well, the sibling. I don't know if it's gender neutral. It's the sibling. I I was part of the curatorial. I was advising the curators of the Kinder Biennale in Dresden, and this was originally, I believe, developed for Arete or for the Ateneo Art Gallery. And then one day I got a call from Mark that it wasn't happening, but then it was not possible for me to bring it to the National Gallery because like it would not fit, and obviously you can't have the same artist exhibiting. He already has his 53 feet bridge, and the opportunity came to present or to pitch the work to Dresden. And so I said, like, okay, do you want like a sibling installation? And then Mark developed this. Do you want to share about this, like why it's so well, and the relationship with the Japanese palace?
Yes, well is the sibling of Firewalk, and water is also kind of involved here because when a bridge goes over the water, the well is a container of water. But well also had those elements similar to Firewalk, except that somehow it looks more settled, or because the material is different. I used stainless steel, and there it's more reflective than the ones I used in other Infinity works. No. So yeah.
Did you actually expect that? So both these works, the bridge and the well, it had like a couple of iterations. So like in Singapore, every year Mark and the team came to change the face of the work, and the same was the intent for the well. Do you want to talk about this, and what was it like for you? Yeah.
We were supposed to do another version of it to change the contents, but then COVID happened, so yeah, it stayed that way.
But for Singapore, it was quite unique. I think like the Infinity works of Mark is quite unique. It has this unique nature that it can change its face as you want it. Like it can adjust to the environment and the space, or an exhibition where it's being presented. So yeah.
Yes, actually now it's changed also in Ateneo.
Yeah.
So if you have time, please go to Ateneo.
Yeah. Have you guys been? It's there. Yeah. It's there until the 7th of July. Oh, 6 in-extend ko ng isang araw. Sorry. I just put this. That's Joy, me, and Florence, and some other artists from Germany. So now, do you want to talk? This is now after the first two, I think like the prototype, so to speak, became Firewalk, and then the birth of Archipelago.
Yeah, so these are the studies for Archipelago. It's for the Philippine Pavilion for Venice Biennale for the 2019 58th Venice Biennale. And it talks about, or it's composed, in the end it's composed of 3 modules actually. The first module talks about the province, and the next is capital, and the last one is the beginning of this cyclone. And they're like biomorphic shape, industrial membranes or something. And again, the excavation and foundation. Um, it, it's a combination of both. You know, you excavate things, you get relics and remnants, and then create a story out of it, and these stories become foundations of your identity as a people, as a nation. You know, so yeah, it talks about that. They're heavy. We
Heavy in terms of content or
They're
heavy,
heavy.
mabigat siya.
bigat siya. Kunwari deep. No? They're deep. But they're heavy. It took 4 40-foot containers. We had to ship 4 40-foot containers, 49 crates, all in all, to Venice, and we assembled them for about a month, a little more than a month. But here in Ateneo, it took us more than a month, about almost maybe 1.5 to 2 months.
But that was for 3 projects. So
Yes, for 3 projects. So with Firewalk, Well, and Archipelago.
So why did you choose the 3 works in Singapore? Yeah, because Marcus had other infinity works. A number of them were wall bound, I think, but you also had settlement. You had other works. Would you? Yeah.
They're all floor pieces. There was one other piece called the settlement, but you have to go inside the cube, and there's also the floor infinity, but there are infinities also on the walls. But here they are all just mainly floor pieces, and all very immersive pieces. So yeah.
Why do it?
Why
One
do it? I
month?
don't know. I don't. Sometimes you don't just. When we think of doing things like this, it's better not to think about it, because you won't do it. You know, if you start listing things that you have to do, you'd get discouraged. So better just do it. You know, and a lot of trial and error is involved every time. You know. And even from the study stage up to the actual rendition, there's a lot of trial and error.
So, Mark, why void of spectacles? Because, like, as you've seen in the photographs, it's a super spectacular work. I guess sorry for using it, but it's really something like it's an extraordinary. People get really excited when they see it, and I'm actually surprised at Ateneo. It's a little bit calmer. Like, the bridge in Singapore, every day you have always a scene, like, you can sometimes even see people on wheelchair. It can actually carry, at least per panel can carry, one compartment can carry 3 people. So, and they keep coming back. Sometimes people are crying. And then the same with Well. And the Well has actually side elements, so smaller elements. And I said in Singapore, the small border markers were being kissed by children because they were wondering, what is this thing? How deep is it? So it has this spectacular element. And then in Germany, they started lifting the works of Mark. And then in Venice, it was like there was just this incessant queue for a couple of months, for 4 months at least. Like, even if it was super, super, super warm, ang init-init, walang aircon. Yeah, no, but why the term? Why this phrase void of spectacles? You mean, like, is it empty of spectacles, or is it like full of spectacles? Yeah.
I was thinking about the word void. And actually, we'd like to ask you also about the word void. Is there such a thing? Because void is a theoretical idealization. There's no region in the universe where there is a void. There's always something happening in every area of the universe. There are fluctuations. It's just not accessible to us. There's no such thing as empty space there's no such thing as nothing. So what is a nothing? It exists here. And it's strange that we, human beings, have developed language and we've created such concepts that actually do not exist. But the void is there, it's mysterious. It seems to represent a nothing, but it's surrounded by a spectacle. And this spectacle is the replication of cross sections, these illusions, and it ends up with nothing. And I begin to think about the word meaning. What is the meaning of meaning? But if you translate it to Tagalog, what's the translation of meaning? Kahulugan. Hulog. It's not the same as meaning. Kahulugan is where it falls, or it continues to fall. So I think it's full of meaning, the void. And it's up to the audience to ponder about these things, you know. And I think that's what the infinities give the audience. We've had a lot of very wonderful, insightful conversations with the audience. So please do come see the show.
Ako na, this is my last question. Like, Mark, to what extent, medyo malaki to, to what extent has your audience influenced the development of your work? And by audience, I mean like the institutions, curators, as well as like, you know, the public.
Yeah, to a very, a good extent. Some of the stories that we tell in Archipelago came from the audience. There are things that we don't notice as makers of the work that the audience notices, you know. So it adds to the work, and these are things that we've missed because there are more than 30 stories embedded in the work, and the people just add to it. So I think it continues to evolve. The meaning of the work continues to evolve, and its direction, actually, even before it was made, the participation of other people in the art scene would contribute to the outcome of the work. That includes everyone. Everyone participating, the institutions, the curators also, and the other artists, the workers, those who have, you know, are not credited. More than 100 people were involved in creating Archipelago. So, yeah.
So, yeah, we wanted to end this with this image. I don't know if you noticed that it actually, somehow I saw that it's a foreshadowing of events to come. Like, this looks like the well, the one that was in Dresden. Same, even the opening. We just saw it the other day, and I thought we'd share it with you. So, yeah, ayan kami.